best answer. I think if I asked any of you, like, hey, you want to go back and graph? You're going to tell me, no thanks, right? It takes a lot of time. Transforming graphs, we didn't even touch on, because so definitely not the most efficient. Completing the square, we also didn't check on. It's tough. I don't love it, hence why we skipped it. Okay, so what are my other options? Could we factor? Sure, but not always do things factor. So here comes the quadratic formula. And any of you that have older siblings, if you tell them they use you learn the quadratic formula, I guarantee they sing the song. And I guarantee they tell you it's one of the most important things that you will study this school year. It's kind of like the slope formula, right? It's something you use over and over and over. We all know Pop Goes the Weasel, right?
Yeah.
Just wait. Sorry, that is not the version I would like. Okay, here's your instrumental of this song. This is not right. Apparently, I should have looked this up before. Here we go. Stop it, you two. I was going to call them out, but appreciate you. Okay, you guys know that song, yes? Okay, so the quadratic formula is an intense equation. Ready? And sometimes it's hard to remember. But if we would just have a little lyrics for it, it could help you out. So here it is. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root, and make the square root big, underneath that square root, b squared minus 4ac, and then underneath is 2a. Yes. Okay. Listen, Linda. Yes. Okay. Now it's your guys' turn. And if you don't sing it, you'll sing it by yourself. Okay? All right. Everybody. Here we go. Ready? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, we're going to do it again. Okay, here we go. Ready? Set, and x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Stand up. Stand up. You got to know this because I don't give it to you, and this is intense. You all agree like this was an intense thing to have, right? You're going to find yourself humming the tune of this, and it's going to come to you automatically. Ready? Loud. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root b minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, sit down. Here's the deal. This looks intense, but as long as you have a calculator, you're going to be fine. I forgot to tell you that. If you don't have your own calculator, get out your Desmos.com calculator. Okay? If somebody says to me, hey, Hoff, can you solve this? I'm not graphing. I am not factoring. I'm solving it by the quadratic formula every single time. Why? Because it works every single time. Okay? Solve x squared minus 12x equals negative 20 by using the quadratic formula. In order to solve it, number one thing, it has to be equal to 0. What is the first thing I should do to get it equal to 0? Add 20 to the other side. So now what does the left side of my equation say? Equals 0. At this point, stop and identify. A is, B is negative 12, C is 20. Okay, so write this out. X equals negative B. So negative, what is B? Negative 12 plus or minus the square root. Make a big square root. B squared, what's B? Negative 12 squared minus 4 times A, which is, times C, which is, all over 2 times A, 2 times 1. Now, what I'm going to tell you, don't try to start simplifying while you're filling that in because you're going to make mistakes. Now, let's simplify this before we put it in the calculator. What's a negative 12? Positive 12 plus or minus the square root. Negative 12 squared. Positive 144. Negative 4 times 1 times 20. Negative 80. All over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now there's one more simplification we should do. 12 plus or minus the square root of 144 minus 80. 64. All over 2. Now, just like when we were graphing, with parabolas, you're going to have two answers, hence the plus or minus. At this point, this breaks into 12 plus the square root of 64 divided by 2, and 12 minus the square root of 64 divided by 2. Now, what is the square root of 64? 8. So really, this is 12 plus 8 divided by 2. 12 plus 8 is 20 divided by 2 is 10. 12 minus 8 divided by 2. 12 minus 8 is 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my answer would be 2 and 10. If I graphed it, I would cross the x-axis at 2 and 10. And you're like, this isn't really entertaining, Ms. Hoff, that we did this because I could have graphed that and gotten that answer. There. You're right. You could have. So let's do it again. Solve 2x squared plus 9x equals 18 by using the quadratic formula. Step 1. What do I got to do? Subtract 18 to the other side. So it now states 2x squared plus 9x minus 18 equals 0. A is 2, B is, C is negative 18. X equals negative 9 plus or minus the square root B squared, so 9 squared minus 4, 2 and negative 18, all over 2a, which is 2. Okay, so negative 9 is negative 9 plus or minus the square root 9 squared 81. Negative 4 times 2 times negative 18. Positive. You have a negative and a negative. You have positive 144 all over 4. Negative 9 plus or minus the square root. 81 plus 144. 225 divided by 4. What is the square root of 225? 15. So you have negative 9 plus 15 over 4 and negative 9 minus 15 over 4. What do you end up as an answer? Six over 4 would be 3 over 2, which would be 1.5. And negative 6, right? So here's an example. Graphing that would have not have been enjoyable. Agreed? Trying to figure out where exactly it is as that decimal. And you're still like, meh. Still could have graphed it. Probably could have figured out 1.5, right? What'd you say? This one talks about rounding. It's the first indication that we got something weird happening here, right? Round to the nearest tenth. It does say if necessary, but good spot. Okay. Do I need to do anything to start with?
No.
Nope. Already equal to 0. A is 3. B is 5. C is negative 12. X equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root. B squared, which is 5 squared minus 4. 3 times negative 12 all over 2 times 3. Yep. Okay. So negative 5 is negative 5 plus or minus the square root. 5 squared? 25. Negative 4 times 3 times negative 12. Positive or negative? Over 6. What's 25 plus 144? 169. Is that a perfect root? $13. So negative 5 plus 13 over 6, negative 5 minus 13 over 6. Now it says to round to the nearest decimal, or sorry, round to the nearest tenth. So negative 5 plus 13 would be 8 divided by 6 rounded to the nearest tenth, 1.3. Negative 5 minus 13, negative 18, right? Yeah. Divided by 6, negative 3. So still not terrible, agreed? Okay. I want you to do the next one on your own. Now, if you are where I am, this is not a nice decimal, agreed? So I got 5 plus or minus the square root of 1,025 divided by 20. And when you take the square root of 1,025, it's not nice. Okay, so this is where it's super important that you know how to put it into your calculator correctly. So this is crucial that you're doing this with us. Okay, everybody agreed that I technically could put the square root of 1,025 into my calculator first, correct? One time, it's a positive 1,025, and I'm going to add 5. Everybody follow what I did? I'm just going to move that 5 to the back, and I'm going to divide it by 20. And the other time, I have a negative square root of 1,025. I'm going to add 5 and divide by 20. Everybody follow what I did there. One time we're adding it, one time we're subtracting it. So one times the square root's positive, one times the square root's negative. Now, how did I know to add 5? Because the 5 is positive, right? The 5 out front is positive. Okay, now, I am not going to lie to you. I like the Desmos calculator better than anybody's calculator in this room. I think it's a lot easier to see what you're doing. You're free to use your calculator, but I think the Desmos one is way simpler. Okay? On the Desmos calculator, I just have to hit the square root key right here, and then I type in 1,025, and I hit enter. Now, if you're on your handheld calculator, you do the same thing. The square root of 1,025, and you hit enter. Now, what am I supposed to do with that number? Nope, don't round to the end. Add 5. So if you're using Desmos, you say answer plus 5, enter. Answer divided by 20, now round. 1.9. Okay, so this is 1.9. Okay, now the next one, I need that 1,025 square root to be negative. So I'm going to type a negative on the outside, square root 1025, and hit enter. It's a negative, yes? Now what do I need to do with it? Answer, add 5, enter. Answer divided by 20, enter. Negative 1.4. I will tell you, the common mistake is that people just say, oh, 1.9 and negative 1.9, right? It is not that case. If our vertex was always at 0, sure. But we all know our vertex isn't at 0, and it's got to be equidistant away. Other than not having the quadratic formula memorized, any questions? You have to memorize it. You are going to hum that song, and I'm going to make you sing it every single day. Okay? Now, there's a second piece. In the quadratic formula, the expression under the radical sign, the b squared minus 4ac, no square root, but what's underneath, is called the discriminant. When you use the discriminant, you can determine the number of solutions in the quadratic equation. Okay, so let's just think about this. B squared minus 4ac. Let's do this on this first one. What's my b value on the first one? 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 5. Order of operations, what do I do first? Exponents, very good. We probably can do them almost at the same time. Do you guys agree? 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times 1 times 5. Negative 20. 4 minus 20 is negative 16. On a graph, now really when you think about that's under the square root. What is the square root of a negative 16? It says error on your calculator? Why?
Because it's negative.
Yeah, you can't have a negative underneath a square root. No number times itself gives me a negative number. So if I was graphing this, it would be one where it never touches the x-axis, meaning no solution, or the number of real solutions would be 0. If that discriminant is negative, you cannot find the square root of a negative number. It does not exist. You have 0 answers, no solution. Okay, let's do the next one. B is 10 squared minus 4 times 25. 10 squared, 100. Negative 4 times 1 times 25. Say it again. Minus 100. 100 minus 100 is 0. Now remember, that's underneath the square root. What's the square root of 0? 0. If I add 0 or I subtract 0, what do you know? It's the same, right? How many solutions do you think that problem has? 1. It is 1 where your vertex is just the only thing that touches the x-axis. So there is 1 solution. Because whether you add 0 or subtract 0, it's going to be the same number. So we take the last one. B is negative 7 squared minus 4 times negative 7 squared, negative 4 times 2 times 2, negative 16. 49 minus 16. 33. Now, when I take the square root of 33, what am I going to get? A decimal, right? And one time I'm going to add that decimal, and one time I'm going to subtract that decimal. Guess how many different answers I have? 2. I have 2 solutions. If I have a graph, that means my parabola hit that x-axis twice. Now, it doesn't matter whether this number is a negative 5,000 or a negative 1. If it's negative, you have 0 solutions. If it's 0, you have 1 solution. And I don't care what number this is, whether it's 1 or 5 million. If it's positive, you're going to have 2 solutions. So some of your homework today doesn't actually care what the answers are. It says state the value of the discriminant and then determine how many solutions there are. I don't care what the solutions are. I just want to know how many. So the discriminant screams at us, all we want to do is b squared minus 4ac. Now, rules still apply. It has to be equal to 0. So first I should add 3. So I have 4x squared plus 5x plus 3 equals 0. A is, B is, C is 3. B squared, B is 5 squared minus 4 times 3. 5 squared is 25. Negative 4 times 3. Negative 48. 25 minus 48. Negative 23. Okay, so it says state the value. There's my first answer. Now, how many real solutions does this problem have? 0 real solutions. Or if you wrote no real solution, I would take that too. Try that bottom one on your own. Find me the discriminant. Tell me how many real solutions there are. What's the value of discriminant? 0, right? So how many solutions are there? 1 solution. The value of your discriminant is 0, means you have 1 solution. All right, your homework starts off, solve the equation by using the quadratic formula, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. That takes you 1 through 6. Then the back page is to solve the value of the discriminant and determine the number of real solutions, which is 7 through 12. I don't care if you start with 1 through 6 or if you want to start with 7 through 12, as long as you have this done at the start of class tomorrow. Ready? Go. I do not have an answer key yet, so I can't even tell if you're right or wrong. There was